Thank you so much, Nina. Welcome, everyone. I'm Bonita Zarrillo, the Member of Parliament for Port Moody Coquitlam. And we're here today on the unceded and traditional territory of the Coquitlam and the shared territories of the Coast Salish people. I'm so proud to be standing next to a team of strong and compassionate Lower Mainland candidates for the NDP. I want to introduce each and every one of them. Michael Charrois from Burnaby North Seymour, Laura Dupont for Coquitlam Port Coquitlam, Martin Lee for Richmond Centre Marpole, Vanessa Sharma for Cloverdale Langley City, Daniel Heidenreich for Pitt Meadows Maple Ridge, Tammy Bentz for North Vancouver Capilano, and Jaeger Rosenberg, West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky country. I'm proud to be a New Democrat because we are the party of working class and everyday people. But all over Canada, we're watching as the rich get rich while everyday people are paying more and more. That's why it gives me hope to have Jagmeet Singh fighting for us and fighting back on corporate greed. There's one leader that's standing up to grocery giants, to big pharma, to big oil, instead of sucking up to them. There's one leader that uses his power to help everyday people, like with the NDP Dental Care Program and the Pharmacare Program. There's one leader that can stop Pierre Poilievre and his cuts. He's the champion for everyday people and for working families. He's my friend, Jagmeet Singh.
Thanks so much, Benita. Thanks for that introduction. Thank you. Thank you, Benita. And Benita, thank you for all the work you do. It's amazing to have you as a colleague and fighting so strong for the working people in Ottawa and always representing your community so well. And as Benita did, she introduced some of our Lower Mainland team. Really honored to have such a great team behind me today. We're up against a real serious threat. And folks are talking about this a lot at the doorsteps. We hear it from people every day. People are worried about Donald Trump and the threats of the attacks on our economy, the tariffs, the war that we're in now, the tariff war, the trade war that we're in. But also I've seen Canadians show a lot of resilience, a lot of strength, the desire to fight back, that fierce pride in our country. And as Premier Eby said, Canadians are also pissed off. They're angry that our neighbor that we worked together with for so long has picked a fight for us for no reason. An illegal fight, an unwanted fight, but a fight nonetheless, and a trade war that we did not want, but we're going to fight back. And my message to Donald Trump is he picked a fight with the wrong country. We may be known for being polite, but we know how to get our elbows up, and we know how to fight back. We're going to defend our country. We will never be the 51st state. We will always be Canada strong and free and proud of who we are. But we do need a plan. We do need a plan to fight back against these serious threats because these threats mean threats to jobs. And I think about the forestry industry here in BC as one of the most trade impacted sectors. But any company that produces something, makes something that's sold to the States is at risk with this trade war. And so that's jobs at risk. We know that people are already paying so much for everything. The cost of everything is so high. And that this trade war could mean that those costs that are already so high could go up even higher. So we need a plan. Here is our plan as New Democrats. First off, workers, Canadians, families, people are standing up and fighting back. They need a government that's going to fight back for them as well. And one of the first things we can do is make sure if a worker loses their job, that they have supports in place. And that means making sure EI is there for workers when they need it. Every worker should be covered by EI, and the amount that they get should be enough to pay the bills, enough to pay the mortgage, pay the rent, pay their bills. And so we need to make sure EI is strong enough to support workers in this uncertain time. We also need a plan to create jobs. Workers want to get to work. Let's create a plan where we build Canadian and buy Canadian. We've got sectors like the lumber sector. Well, let's add more value to lumber here in Canada, build the cut the 2x4s that we need. And then when we build in Canada, when we build any infrastructure project, let's use 100% Canadian content and 100% Canadian workers. All the workers, all the content should be from our country to create good jobs for people in our country, to keep good jobs in our country, and to build an economy that's more resilient. That's what we got to do. And finally, with the threat of the cost of living going up even higher, we know that corporations have often used these crises as an excuse to jack up their prices, to engage in price gouging. So we got to put an end to price gouging, protect consumers with stronger laws to protect them from being taken advantage of. And given that that's our plan, let's talk about the other leaders and their plans. I first want to acknowledge that and congratulate Mark Carney for his victory yesterday. But what is his plan and vision for Canada? Well, he's said it yesterday in his acceptance speech. One of the first things he promised to do is a tax cut that mostly helps millionaires. Right. He is telling you who he's in it for. That tax cut is to change or to reverse on the capital gains changes. So he wants to give an advantage that's mostly going to help millionaires and a very small percentage of Canadians. So that's his priority. He also has said very clearly that he wants to cut jobs at the federal level, so cut jobs and cut services like healthcare. So that is his plan for the economic uncertainty of Donald Trump, for the threats of Donald Trump, is to give money to millionaires, to cut jobs, and to cut healthcare. And you don't take my word for it. Liberals like Karina Gould have said that is in fact his plan. His plan is to cut services and cut jobs. That is the wrong plan right now for the challenges we're up against. What about Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives? Well, Pierre Poilievre was endorsed by Elon Musk, and he accepted that endorsement. So he is the pick of Elon Musk, who is, of course, the billionaire buddy of Donald Trump. So he's the pick of the Donald Trump administration. He's not going to stand up to Donald Trump. He's going to do whatever his buddy Elon Musk wants him to do. He doesn't want to upset that endorsement. So he's not going to stand up for Canadians. That's why our approach is more important than ever. We know what workers are going through, and we're going to fight for you. We're not going to fight for billionaires or for CEOs like Mark Carney. We're not going to try to please Elon Musk like Pierre Poilievre. We're going to fight for you. You are my priority, working people, everyday families. And that's why what we've done during the pandemic, that's why we did during the minority governments, has all been about fighting for you and your family, and we're going to continue to do that. And my final thing that I want to touch on, we're talking about Donald Trump and the threat he has to our country. Let's talk about the way we should treat Donald Trump. He is someone that is a convicted felon, 34 counts. He's a convicted felon. He's a convicted criminal. For criminals to come into our country, normally they would have to get an exemption. If they're a dignitary, and I use that term very loosely when I talk about Donald Trump, if there's someone of prominence, normally the normal course of action is that a minister in cabinet would have to sign the exemption for them to come to our country. My commitment to you is this, that my team behind me, you see a new Democrat government, no minister in my government, no minister in my cabinet would ever sign an exemption for someone like Donald Trump to come to Canada, as long as there are illegal tariffs, as long as there's the trade war, as long as there are threats to our democracy, to our sovereignty, to our country. No one's going to sign that exemption. He's not going to get special treatment for being a convicted criminal. As long as he's attacking your country, he's not welcome in our country. My challenge, though, is Mark Carney is about to be sworn as prime minister. Will he do the same? Will he make the same commitment that a convicted criminal who's attacking our country should not get an exemption, should not get special treatment? Will Pierre Poilievre do the same? Will he make the same commitment? We'll see, but that's my challenge to them both. New Democrats are committed to fighting for Canadians. We're going to fight, and we're going to win this fight. Merci mes amis, je suis tellement honoré d'être ici. Premièrement, un grand merci à Bonita Zarrillo pour l'introduction, mais aussi pour son travail acharné. Et je suis tellement fier d'être ici avec une partie de notre équipe pour Colombie-Britannique. Derrière moi, on a des candidats et candidates incroyables. Je suis tellement fier qu'on a ces candidats dans notre équipe et avec moi aujourd'hui. Et je veux parler de la situation dans laquelle on se retrouve. On est dans une guerre commerciale. On a des menaces tellement inquiétantes de Donald Trump. Et c'est une situation où on doit se battre pour défendre notre pays. Je suis fier de dire qu'il y a une résilience incroyable à travers le pays. Des Canadiens sont fiers de notre pays. Ils ont montré cette résilience. Ils sont prêts de défendre notre pays. Je suis fier de ça. Parce que c'est une menace tellement grave. C'est une menace qui peut impacter des centaines de milliers d'emplois. Ça peut augmenter le coût de la vie, un coût qui est déjà trop élevé. Donc, c'est des menaces sérieuses. Donc, les Canadiens sont prêts à se battre pour notre pays. Le gouvernement doit aussi se battre pour notre pays. Donc, on a un plan pour faire face à la menace de Donald Trump, un plan pour protéger les travailleurs. Ceci est notre plan. Premièrement, on doit améliorer et augmenter l'assurance-emploi. Si quelqu'un perd leurs emplois, ils doivent savoir qu'on a un programme pour les aider. Ça veut dire on doit rendre le programme plus accessible pour tous les travailleurs et le montant doit être adéquat pour se permettre de payer les factures. Ça, c'est les deux éléments essentiels dans une augmentation de l'assurance emploi. Deuxièmement, on doit avoir un plan pour construire au Canada. On doit utiliser les produits canadiens et les travailleurs canadiens pour développer une économie qui est plus forte. Et le gouvernement doit utiliser le pouvoir d'achat. Et chaque fois qu'on investit dans les projets, on doit utiliser seulement le contenu canadien, seulement les travailleurs canadiens pour créer cette économie plus forte face à la menace de Donald Trump. Et finalement, on sait que dans ces temps de crise, les grandes entreprises souvent utilisent cette crise pour arnaquer les gens. Donc, on doit arrêter les grandes entreprises d'exploiter les gens avec plus de protection pour les consommateurs. On va faire ça aussi. Mais c'est quoi l'approche des autres chefs dans ce contexte? Premièrement, on commence avec Mark Carney. Je le félicite pour sa victoire. Mais c'est quoi son plan? Il a déjà encore annoncé son plan pendant son discours. Il veut couper des impôts pour les millionnaires et couper les services comme les soins de santé pour les gens. Ça, c'est son plan. Il a déjà montré ses priorités et c'est les millionnaires et c'est de couper les services pour les travailleurs. Ce n'est pas la bonne chose à faire à ce moment. Je pense que c'est la pire chose à faire à ce moment. Et Pierre Poilievre, c'est quoi son plan? Pierre Poilievre et les conservateurs, il a le choix d'Elon Musk. Elon Musk, c'est le chum milliardaire de Donald Trump. Donc, Elon Musk a appuyé Pierre Poilievre parce qu'il sait que Pierre Poilievre ne va pas défendre notre pays. Il veut faire plaisir à Elon Musk. Il veut faire plaisir à Elon Musk. Donc, il n'est pas quelqu'un qui peut défendre notre pays. Ça, c'est pourquoi, plus que jamais, les gens ont besoin des néo-démocrates. L'équipe derrière moi, c'est une équipe qui va défendre vos valeurs, défendre les Canadiens et se battre pour les travailleurs, pour monsieur, madame, tout le monde. On va gagner cette bataille et on va la gagner pour les travailleurs. Mais finalement, je veux mettre un défi devant les autres chefs. Donald Trump est maintenant un criminel. Il était dans le cours de justice, ils ont trouvé que c'est un criminel. Pour les criminels, il doit avoir une exemption pour entrer notre pays. Souvent, avec les dignitaires, c'est les ministres qui signent cette exemption. Mon engagement, c'est qu'un gouvernement néo-démocrate ne va jamais signer une exemption pour Donald Trump pendant qu'il continue de menacer notre pays, menace notre souveraineté et menace nos travailleurs. Pendant ce temps, on ne va pas signer une exemption pour qu'il puisse entrer notre pays. Je vais mettre un défi devant Mark Carney. Est-ce qu'il va faire la même chose? Il va devenir Premier ministre. Est-ce qu'il est prêt de dire non à Donald Trump et ne pas donner une exemption à Donald Trump? Je mets le défi devant Pierre Poilievre aussi. Est-ce qu'il est prêt de aussi appuyer ma position de ne pas donner une exemption à un criminel comme Donald Trump pendant qu'il attaque notre pays? C'est le défi que je vais mettre devant ces autres chefs de parti et on va avoir leur réponse. Merci. Thank you for that. I'm ready for any questions you might have.
We're going to start with questions on site. We'll start with Tri-City News.
Hi, Jagmeet. Mario Bartel from the Tri-City News. It's ironic you're giving this announcement in a community that's about to lose its last independent news organization that served these residents for 40 years. Other publications are closing. By the time we get to the federal election, there'll be 500,000 people in Metro Vancouver who have no local independent news voice to find out about their local candidates. What do you plan to do about the Online News Act and give it some teeth so that other communities across this country don't face becoming a news desert?
First of all, thank you for the question, and it's really disturbing to see the loss of local journalism. I remember when I started in politics, how people relied on their local news to get information about their local candidate. We had local candidate debates that were covered by the local news, and that's how people got to learn about their candidate. So it's really troubling to see that sad decline. And there is a role the government has to play in supporting local media. One of my hopes was using some leverage on the global social media giants. If they contributed just a little bit. They paid the workers, the journalists, for the work that they did whenever they put it on their websites. That could create enough revenue to more than strengthen our local news. It was something that Australia did to great effect, and I wanted to see that happen in Canada. But as you mentioned, the Online News Act did not have the teeth necessary to achieve that goal, and it remains a big challenge. So I want to see more protections in place against web giants that are taking up all the space. And they should be paying journalists for the work they do. And that would have more than covered the amount necessary to keep local journalism alive. So we're going to continue to find ways that will strengthen local journalism. It's deeply concerning to me. And I think it should concern anyone who cares about democracy. The more we have access to local journalism, the better it is for local residents to get information.
CTV next.
Good morning. My question is about the initiative you mentioned about Buy Canadian, Build Canadian. Can you be more specific about what that looks like and how you would enforce that?
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever we build a project at the federal level, there's a money that goes into that project that the federal government invests in. So talking about anything from a road, a bridge, or big projects like public transit or big infrastructure builds, capital builds like hospitals or buildings. Whenever the federal government puts money into those projects, we put in certain requirements. The project has to meet certain criteria, certain requirements have to be satisfied for that project to go ahead. What I'm committing to now is we should ensure that anytime we're spending money at the federal level to build something, which we do on a regular basis, that the requirement now moving forward should be that when we are building a project, every single component that can be made in Canada should be 100% sourced from Canada. That would create jobs in our country. The jobs that the workers that actually do that work should be 100% Canadian. No temporary foreign workers should be hired in those type of projects. It should be all Canadian workers, all Canadian content. This is a type of change that could really spur a lot of economic activity, give some predictability for those producers that make those products in Canada, and actually grow the market so we have more producers making the things that we need in our country. So that's the approach. It could be changing the rules around procurement, so the way we buy things, and when we fund a project, in the requirements of that project should be, it's got to be Canadian content, it's got to be Canadian workers.
What do you think of BC's approach to responding to the tariffs? David Eby has said that he's pulling off liquor off of store shelves from red states. Is that enough? Would you like to see more done at the provincial level?
I think Premier Eby has certainly shown his strength. To take that position is the right thing to do, and so I think I acknowledge. Premier Eby's also suggested something like, so I think that's a strong step. It is sending a clear message that we are upset and we're angry, like he said. British Columbians are pissed off, and that's a way of showing that. In addition, Premier Eby suggests something that I've also echoed, that there are things that the United States needs from us, and they can't really source from anywhere else. One of those things is critical minerals. We should cut off the flow of critical minerals. I'll also point out that you might know where I'm going with this. Critical minerals are needed in certain products, namely batteries. Well, that's an approach that's going to directly target Elon Musk and his one of the billionaire buddies of Donald Trump. So that's another approach that I've suggested. In addition, I've said we should have 100% tariffs on Tesla. Let's hit Elon Musk directly where it counts and make it impossible for him to be able to sell any of his cars in our country. We need to be very aggressive on this. This is an all-out fight, and we have to be ready to use any and every tool possible. And so I acknowledge some of the premiers like Premier Eby who are prepared to do that type of thing, who are ready to put everything on the table so that we can fight back against Donald Trump. It's a fight that we've got to fight, and it's a fight that we've got to win, and we have to be ready to do what it takes.
We're going to go to City News next.
Yeah. So with the Trump administration going back and forth on whether tariffs are on or off, now it seems we're in a situation where, I haven't done the math, but people could look and think that now Canada is doing more tariffs than the US. That's what the Liberal government has chosen to do, and some provincial governments, and Ford's talking about this 25% surplus. But on the federal level, if you were in power now, would you have done the same thing? Would you have gone forward with all the retaliatory tariffs, which, as I understand, were designed to be in response to 25% across the board? Or would you have given Trump's behavior, given it at least a week past the supposed deadline before, putting everything in motion that now the tariffs are in place and we might look like the aggressor?
I think no one's going to get it confused who's the aggressor here. Donald Trump started this war with us.
Well,
And
in the States is what I mean.
Right. I think it's really clear. Donald Trump started this war for no reason. Like, if you think about how it happened, it literally came out of the blue. In a lot of ways, we were the envy of the world to have two big nations sharing such a massive border together and to have built an economy where we were integrated, we would work together, and where we had peace and prosperity between the two nations for so long. And really just out of the blue, for no real justified reason, he took this attack on Canada, which was also an attack on his own people, mind you. He plummeted the stock market in his own country by the threats of tariffs. He hurt workers on both sides of the border with the threat and the instability. So he's causing chaos. And the thing about him, what he's doing is he's like a toddler smashing his toys, but his toys are people's lives and jobs and our economy. And so we cannot say, oh, because his temper tantrum has cooled down a bit and then just take him at his word. He's threatened our country. He's threatened our jobs, even just the threat of tariffs, minus the pauses. Just the threats have already meant job losses. There's many companies that had to scale back. Workers have been laid off already, even though the tariffs technically are not in place. Even the steel and aluminum tariffs were on pause. But just the threat of it has created such uncertainty that people have lost their jobs. So we got to take it seriously. So no, I would continue to respond with the threats that he's imposed on us. And even though he's paused this, started this, there's all sorts of deadlines. Every couple of days, there's another deadline because of his chaos that he's created. That chaos itself is something that we reject. We can't allow even for the chaos to continue because it puts our economy and our workers, really, ultimately, for me, it's what I'm worried about the most. It puts our workers in jeopardy. So we've got to fight back. And I think we should look at other things as well. Look at energy exports. The Americans need our energy exports. That's something we should consider. Critical minerals, I mentioned, is something that they need. We should consider that as well. There's other things as well. Tearing up effectively a trade agreement also means he's teared up the patent protections. So what's to say now in Canada we can't have our generic medication producers start producing patented medication? He's torn up that agreement by breaking it. So we should look at every tool possible to push back and to give pain to Donald Trump and to his administration so they know they picked a fight with the wrong country and we're ready to fight back. I've dealt with bullies my whole life. I stare them down my whole life. I know the way you fight a bully is show strength and conviction and show that you're ready to fight. And we've got to show that.
We're going to head to Zoom for questions next.
Yep, thank you very much, James. So we'll start with Mackenzie Gray with the Global News. Please go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Singh. With
Hello.
Mark Carney's victory last night, he's going to be the Prime Minister in a couple of days. Do you think he has the mandate required to be able to govern the country at this point in time, considering the trade war with Donald Trump? Or do you think it would be appropriate to head to an election quickly?
Well, what I've said around a timing of an election is we are up against probably one of the most grave economic threats that we've seen in our lifetime, given the breadth of it, the uncertainty of it, and the potential length of it. This could last the 4 years of Donald Trump's presidency. So this is potentially worse than what we've ever seen. And given how serious it is, I've said my criteria for moving forward. One thing is we got to put in place supports our workers. We had a couple of announcements, but nothing really at the level necessary to let a worker know if you lose your job because of this trade war, we got your back. That is not actually in place right now. So supports for those workers, one, and two, a plan, an economic plan that creates more jobs in our country, that we build Canadian and buy Canadian. I think those two things need to be put in place first, and we can have an election afterwards. Given the gravity of what we're against, how serious it is, given the potential loss of jobs, given the workers that I've spoken with and the leaders I've spoken with said, we need something in place now before we go to an election. I'm ready to go tomorrow. If that's what Mark Carney decides, we're going to go. We're going to fight. But I think it's the time now to put in place some of these protections before we go to an election.
Your party has lagged behind both the Liberals and the Conservatives in terms of fundraising numbers. I know you say you're ready, but do you think you'll be able to run the kind of campaign that the other two parties, I should say, will be able to run in the next election?
Yeah, we're in the best financial position that we've been in a number of years, probably since 2015. And so we'll be able to run a fully funded campaign, the best campaign funding that I've had as leader. So I'm looking forward to a well-funded campaign, and we're ready to go. And most importantly, I'm ready to give Canadians a choice. And the choice is between Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. What are they proposing? Mark Carney has said really straight up what he wants to do. He wants a tax cut for millionaires. He wants to cut jobs at the federal level and cut services like healthcare. That is wrong. And if you don't trust that, my word for that, that's his plan. Karina Gold, one of the Liberal leadership contestants, also said the same thing, that that is his plan. That is exactly what he is proposing to do. I do not think that that is a prescription that we need for the malady that we're up against right now. That cutting jobs, cutting services like healthcare, and a tax cut for millionaires is not the recipe to deal with what we're up against right now. What we need is investments in workers. We need to strengthen our healthcare and strengthen our social services, not weaken them at this time when people are so worried and there's so much uncertainty. So it's the wrong approach. Pierre Poilievre is literally Donald Trump's choice. He's Elon Musk. Elon Musk has endorsed him. No one doubts the closeness, the proximity of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. So if he's the pick of Elon Musk, that means he's the pick of Donald Trump. I don't know how you expect someone like that to stand up for Canada. He's not going to. And he's also said what his plan is. Massive cuts to the things that you need. That's going to cost you a lot of money. Think about the cost if he cuts childcare, which he's proposed. That's thousands of dollars a year for families. He wants to cut the child benefit. That's $600 a month for some families. He wants to cut the things that you need. It's going to cost you a lot of money. Our offer is this. Let's strengthen what we believe in, like our healthcare. Let's strengthen it. Let's make it better. And let's lower the cost of living. Let's take on corporate greed and bring down the cost of groceries. Let's build homes that people can actually afford. That's our plan. And I'm ready to take that plan to Canadians.
Nous allons maintenant à Valérie Gamache avec Radio-Canada. C'est à vous.
Bonjour, Monsieur Singh. Je veux revenir sur justement votre approche de dire il faut avoir un plan pour les travailleurs et ensuite aller en élection. Croyez pas que, étant donné que Monsieur Carney n'est pas élu, il n'a tout simplement pas le mandat d'établir et de faire adopter un plan pour les travailleurs?
On a déjà vu pendant la pandémie que notre assurance emploi n'est pas suffisant. Il n'est pas suffisamment fort pour aider les gens. Donc, c'est clair que ces augmentations ont quelque chose qu'on a déjà dit à plusieurs reprises qu'on doit faire. Et maintenant, les travailleurs, les chefs des syndicats ont dit la même chose, que l'assurance emploi n'est pas au niveau nécessaire pour aider les gens dans ce temps incertain. Donc, pour moi, il n'y a pas une question qu'on doit améliorer l'assurance emploi tout de suite avec les changements qui étaient déjà proposés par tous les experts. Et c'est pas difficile de comprendre si l'assurance emploi couvrait seulement 40% des gens, ça veut dire 60% des Canadiens, la majorité des Canadiens ne sont pas couverts par ce programme. Ça, c'est un problème. Et deuxièmement, donc c'est facile pour les libéraux de comprendre ça. Et deuxièmement, le montant qu'on reçoive pour compenser le manque de salaire n'est pas suffisant pour payer les factures, pour se permettre de payer les factures. Donc, ce sont les deux changements essentiels pendant une crise qui est assez grave dans laquelle on se retrouve.
Donc, vous ne demandez pas à Mark Carney de déclencher rapidement des élections?
Non, je demande que le gouvernement fasse son travail. Et le travail, c'est de protéger les travailleurs, et deuxièmement, mettre en œuvre un plan où on construit l'infrastructure dont on a besoin, avec les contenus canadiens, avec les travailleurs canadiens.
Nous allons maintenant David Baxter aussi.
Je m'excuse. Et puis, on va avoir une élection et on doit avoir une élection. Mais avant de cette élection, on doit avoir ces deux mesures en place, dans mon avis.
Thank you. David Baxter with CP, please go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Singh. Seeing some new data from Abacus this morning saying that it looks like there's the NDP is caught in a bit of a cycle of not being able to break through with support. Polling people who are open to voting for the NDP but haven't before. They have a quarter of them saying they just don't want to see a conservative government, so they're going to vote for the party that can best beat them. And another quarter saying that they're not going to vote for the NDP because they don't think the NDP can win an election. With the momentum behind the Liberals right now, with seeing their big upsurge and the Conservatives looking like on a bit of a downward trend, how does the NDP break through to say, no, we are the actual party who could beat Poilievre?
Well, we talk about what our values are and what do people need in this time. Let us be very clear about Mark Carney. What he wants to do is not put you and your family first. And he's already told us what he wants to do. This is not even opposition researcher. This is not an attack. This is his own words. He's just in his acceptance speech said one of the first things he wants to do is put in place a tax cut that really only helps mostly people who earn over $1 million and a very small percentage of Canadians at that. In a time of one of the most serious economic threats to our country, that's his plan. He also proposed, in his own words, to cut workers at the federal level. That's job cuts. At a time of economic uncertainty, he wants to fire workers. And he's also proposed cutting operating budget. And in cutting the operating budget at the federal level means cutting services. There's no other way to cut that. Liberals have agreed that that is his plan. So he's proposing to cut services, to cut jobs, and cut taxes for millionaires. That's his plan. In one of the most serious economic threats we're up against, that's his plan. That is the wrong course of action. And Pierre Poilievre has already said again what he wants to do. He wants to cut services. He wants to cut healthcare. He wants to cut and cost you lots. And he is the buddy of, or he is the endorsement of the buddy of Donald Trump. So in a fight against Donald Trump, that's not the guy you want in your corner. He's going to throw in the towel and do whatever Elon Musk and Donald Trump ask him to do. He is not your guy. And so I'm going to make this case to Canadians. I'm your guy. This team behind me, we're in it for you. Lots of red flags with Carney. Lots of concerns with Poilievre, but we are in it for you. We're going to fight for you. We're going to put you and your families first. That's what New Democrats have always done. And I ask you to trust us. We've shown you again and again, we're going to fight for you.
Of course, right now, MPs expected to come back to Ottawa in just under 2 weeks' time. You want to get some legislation passed before an election. Are you going to be trying to meet with Mark Carney before March 24th to try to strike a deal to get some legislation across the finish line before likely spring election?
Well, I've said publicly, and I'll continue to repeat it publicly, I've put forward what I want to see happen. Protections for workers and a plan to create more jobs in Canada. Let's see that happen. We did it in the pandemic because we saw how serious things were. All the leaders got together and we put place real supports. Mind you, New Democrats led the charge on a lot of those changes, but we're ready to do it again because we know that this is really serious. And then we're absolutely ready to have an election. But let's get in place some protection so workers have some security. Let's have a plan to jumpstart our economy, to create more jobs. And then let's have an election. So if the Liberals want to do that, if the government wants to do that, we've said very clearly that we're prepared to do that.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much. This concludes our press conference. Ceci conclut notre conférence de presse. Merci.
Thanks, everybody. Merci. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. You guys are awesome. Thank you.